Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. I'm Dan Garodnick, Chair of the City Planning Commission and Director of the Department of City Planning. Welcome to today's review session of the City Planning Commission. We're joined today by Vice Chair Knuckles, Commissioners Benjamin Cerullo, Crowell, Dweck, Goodrich, Kermani, Marin, Osorio, and Rampersad. And welcome to all of you. Before we get into today's agenda, I'd just like to very briefly cover some recent updates from the Department of City Planning. To start, I want to express my thanks to Queensborough President Donovan Richards for announcing his support for City of Yes for housing opportunity, our plan to build a little more housing everywhere, provide New Yorkers with more housing choice, and bring housing costs down. City of Yes has now received positive recommendations from the borough presidents of the Bronx, Brooklyn, Manhattan, and Queens, a significant milestone as we work to deliver the housing and affordable housing that New Yorkers need and deserve. I want to note we're also joined by Commissioner Gold on Zoom. On the topic of support for City of Yes, I'd also like to highlight a recent Daily News editorial that praised its provision to legalize housing with shared living spaces. This is a prime example of a currently prohibited housing type that could benefit so many New Yorkers, including recent college graduates or older single people. Allowing more small and shared apartments would also open up larger family-sized apartments otherwise being occupied by roommates and aligns with our goal to promote diverse housing options. I'd also encourage everyone to read a recent op-ed in the Queens Chronicle by Annetta Sicharan, the executive director of Shia, a nonprofit community development corporation, where she called for the legalization of accessory dwelling units, aka ADUs. As she writes, Queens' close-knit communities and deep family ties encourage many families to stay in their neighborhoods, but capacity is too often limited. ADUs can greatly help support multi-generational households. Finally, some big news that harkens back to my role as the council member who worked on the Greater East Midtown Plan, along with Commissioner Mann, which happened to have been approved back in 2017. Mayor Eric Adams and the Department of Transportation announced a request for proposals to put the park back into Park Avenue with a redesign that will make the corridor greener, safer, and more welcoming. It's another example of how the Greater East Midtown Plan continues to deliver for the public and improve livability and public safety in New York City. For today's review session, we will learn about new housing proposals across the city, starting with several land use actions by the Department of Housing Preservation and Development in Brownsville, Brooklyn. Known as the Brownsville Neighborhood Construction Program, these actions look to facilitate 3 100% income-restricted affordable buildings, totaling 60 homes at 425 Mother Gaston Boulevard, 546 Thomas Boylan Street, and 1733-1735 St. Mark's Avenue. The first of those 3 buildings would also include ground floor retail. The sites are all within the vicinity of different subway or Long Island Railroad stations and a branch of the Brooklyn Public Library. In East Harlem, we'll hear details on an HPD proposal to facilitate infill development on a surface parking lot surrounding the East Harlem Multi-Service Center on East 120th Street. The new building, called The Beacon, would contain over 280 income-restricted homes and be located near several green spaces, including Wagner Playground. The project entails a gut renovation and enlargement of the multi-service center, as well as the construction of new pedestrian pathways that would connect the nearby Wagner houses public housing development. This site was first identified for affordable housing as part of the City Council's East Harlem Planning Study, a recommendation incorporated into the final DCP-led neighborhood plan for East Harlem. It's another example of how we follow through on our planning commitments. Next up is a proposal for a mixed-use development at 12203 14th Avenue in Whitestone, Queens. The building would include over 100 homes, around 30 of them permanently income-restricted, located near the Q20B and Q65 bus stops and College Point Park. The building would also feature ground floor retail. We'll next head to Crown Heights, Brooklyn for a fresh certification which allows property owners to construct slightly larger buildings in mixed residential and commercial districts if they include a supermarket that provides a full range of grocery products, including fresh meat, fruit, and vegetables. In this case, the applicant is 1034-1042 Atlantic Avenue, came before us for rezoning in 2022, if you recall. With the fresh certification, the building would gain one more story, going from 17 to 18 stories, increasing the number of homes to nearly 250 total, of which almost 50 would be permanently income restricted. The site sits a few blocks from the C train and the Franklin Avenue shuttle. Back to Manhattan, we'll go over an authorization for the Bell Nord at 2360 Broadway on the Upper West Side. This application would allow a bank tenant to occupy the ground floor retail space of this building that fronts Broadway while exceeding the maximum 25-foot street wall width. We will also continue discussing public testimony received for several proposals, including 962 to 972 Franklin Avenue and City of Yes for housing opportunity. That's it. A lot of stuff. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Madam Secretary, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Good afternoon and welcome to the City Planning Commission Review Session for Monday, September 9th, 2024. The time is 1:09 p.m. and a quorum is present. The first item on our agenda is a certification of a UDAP designation, project approval, disposition of city-owned property, and zoning map and zoning text amendments in Brooklyn Community District 16. Our presenter is Juki Sai.
All right, Juki, welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is an application by the Department of Housing Preservation and Development, HPD, for a UDAP, as well as a zoning map and zoning text amendment in order to facilitate 3 new 100% income restricted developments, totaling 60 apartments and 2,000 square feet of commercial space. The project is located at 3 scattered sites in the neighborhood of Brownsville within Community District 16, Brooklyn. The first site is at 425 Mother Gaston Boulevard. The second is at 546 Thomas Boylan Street. Both sites are located in Council District 41, that's Councilmember Mealy, and would be subject to the UDAP action. The third site is located at 1735 St. Mark's Avenue in Council District 37, that's Councilmember Nurse, and will be subject to the same UDAP action. Additionally, it would be subject to a zoning map amendment from M11 to R7A C24 and a zoning text amendment to establish an MIH area. The surrounding area of Brownsville is characterized by a mix of residential and commercial use, with industrial use clustered to the east. Nearby, there are large NYCHA campuses and community facilities, including schools, houses of worship, daycare centers, and a branch of the Brooklyn Public Library. There are also multiple public open spaces, including Howard Playground and Carter G. Woodson Children's Park. Pitkin Avenue, which runs east to west, serves as a major retail corridor for the area. The 3 sites are well served by public transportation, including the Sutter Avenue L subway station, shown on the bottom right of the screen here, as well as the Rockaway Avenue 3 train station, located 3 blocks south of Sutter Avenue, that's out of the frame here. The East New York LIRR station is 3 blocks northwest of the St. Mark's Avenue site, and the area is also served by the B14, B12, and B60 bus lines. For context, there are several new HPD-led mixed-use projects in the area currently being developed as part of HPD's Brownsville plan. These include Brownsville Art Center and Apartments, which is labeled here, a new 9-story, 258,000 square foot development with 290 income-restricted apartments, and Glenmore Manor, also labeled here in pink, a new 11-story mixed-use development currently under construction, which will have 230 income-restricted apartments. As noted, both are part of HPD's Brownsville plan, in addition to 4 new residential buildings along Livonia Avenue, further to the south out of the frame here. Moving into the sites, Site 1 is located at 425 Mother Gaston Boulevard, outlined here in neon green. This shows an aerial view of the block where Site 1 is located. The yellow hash indicates the project area. The land uses within the surrounding area include a mix of commercial, mixed residential and commercial buildings, residential buildings, institutional uses, and open space, including Carter G. Woodson Children's Park directly behind the site. Site 1 is located within an R6 zoning district with a C13 commercial overlay. This shows a street view of Site 1. It is currently vacant city-owned land with a lot area of 2,500 square feet. The proposed development is a 4-story, 7,018 square foot mixed-use building with an approximate FAR of 2.8, containing 6 income-restricted 1-bedroom apartments. The building would also include approximately 2,000 square feet of ground floor commercial space. The only action needed to facilitate this development is a designation of an urban development action area and approval of an urban development action area project and disposition of city-owned property. This action is known as a UDAP. Site 2 is located at 546 Thomas Boylan Street, outlined here in the neon green hash. This shows an aerial view of the block where Site 2 is located. The yellow hash indicates the site. The land uses within the surrounding area include residential to the north on Thomas Boylan Street, and mixed residential and commercial buildings, institutional uses, and open space on Sutter Avenue to the south. Site 2 is located within an R6 zoning district. This shows a street view of Site 2. It is currently vacant city-owned land with a lot area of 6,000 square feet, and the yellow hash indicates the project area. The proposed development is a 6-story, 17,900 square foot residential building with an approximate FAR of 3. It would include 21 income-restricted apartments with a mix of 1, 2, and 3-bedroom units. The proposed building would include a landscape rear yard with seating accessible to tenants. The only action needed to facilitate this development is a UDAP. Site 3 is located at 1733, 1735 St. Mark's Avenue, outlined here in neon green hash. As mentioned earlier, Site 3 is the only one of the 3 sites in this application that would be subject to the proposed zoning map and zoning text amendments, in addition to the UDAP action that affects all 3 sites. The project area to be rezoned includes the development site outlined here in pink, which is vacant city-owned land. There's also a 2-story mixed-use commercial and residential building, a church, and 2 single-story commercial buildings that house a Dollar General, a medical office, and vacant space that was formerly East New York Pharmacy. The surrounding area is characterized with a mix of residential with mixed commercial and residential, commercial and office, institutional, and industrial uses. The project area is located within an M11 zoning district and directly southwest of a portion of an R7A C24 district mapped as part of the 2016 East New York Neighborhood Plan. Moving into some site photos, and we have a full set because this is an area to be rezoned. This photo looks north at St. Mark's Avenue, from St. Mark's Avenue directly at Site 3, which consists of 3 vacant lots totaling approximately 6,600 square feet. The pink hash mark indicates the development site. Moving east to where St. Mark's meets East New York Avenue, this photo looks north at the project area, and you can see Brownsville AME Zion Church on the right-hand side with that burgundy awning. Continuing east on East New York Avenue, this photo looks north at the project area, and you can see on the right-hand side the former East New York Pharmacy, which is currently closed. This photo looks northeast at the intersection of East New York Avenue and Mother Gaston Boulevard. Again, there's the closed East New York Pharmacy. I think you can see a posting for the, renting. This photo looks west at the project area from Mother Gaston Boulevard. You can see the medical office and the Dollar General. And this photo looks southeast from the intersection of Mother Gaston Boulevard and Bergen Street. You can see the Dollar General on the right-hand side, and the new residential development that's on the left-hand side, that's outside of the project area. And looming in the background, you can see the campus of Howard Houses. I wasn't shown in any of these photos, but Howard Pool is directly across the street for those who enjoy swimming. The proposed development is a 9-story, 27,888 square foot residential building that would include 33 income-restricted apartments with a mix of studio, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. The proposed building would include a landscaped rear yard with seating accessible to tenants from the ground floor. HPD is proposing a UDAP action necessary to facilitate all 3 developments. And in addition to the UDAP action, HPD is proposing a zoning map amendment and a zoning text amendment in order to facilitate the proposed development on Site 3, which I just showed. The zoning map amendment would rezone part of an existing M11 district to an R7A C24 district by extending an existing R7A C24 district 1 block southwest along the frontage of East New York Avenue to St. Mark's Avenue. R7A districts permit inclusionary housing developments up to 4.6 FAR with a minimum base height of 40 feet, maximum base height of 75 feet, and a maximum building height of 95 feet or 9 stories. C24 districts are commercial districts mapped as overlays in residential districts that allow a range of local serving retail and service uses. Commercial uses have a maximum FAR of 2.0, but are limited to the ground floor in mixed-use buildings. Oh, there we go. The applicant is also proposing a zoning text amendment to map mandatory inclusionary housing options 1 and 2 coterminous with the proposed project area. Option 1 requires that a minimum of 25% of the residential floor area be designated as affordable to households earning incomes with an average not exceeding 60% of area median income, or AMI. Option 2 requires that a minimum of 30% of the residential floor area be designated as affordable to households earning incomes with an average not exceeding 80% of AMI. While both options 1 and 2 would be mapped, the applicant is currently planning to select MIH option 1. This application requires a racial equity report, which helps put the MIH proposal into context with neighborhood-level socioeconomic data. According to the racial equity report, the median household income in Brownsville Ocean Hill is roughly $34,500. The proposed development would include 60 dwelling units, with 100% of those being income restricted. The applicant states that they would provide a total of 8 dwelling units for formerly homeless individuals, 17 for individuals earning between 31 and 50% of AMI, and 35 dwelling units for those earning between 50 and 80% of AMI. The estimated monthly rent for affordable units for households earning between 31 and 50% of AMI is $1,090 for a studio to $1,400 for a two-bedroom apartment. The population living in Brownsville Ocean Hill is 67% Black non-Hispanic, 23% Hispanic Latino, 3% white non-Hispanic, and 1% Asian non-Hispanic. From 2010 to 2020, the area saw a 12% increase in population, with an increase in the Asian, Hispanic, and white populations, and no increase in the Black non-Hispanic population. While population grew by 12%, the number of housing units in Community District 16 grew by just 8%, most by HPD projects. In summary, this is an application by the Department of Housing Preservation and Development for a UDAP, zoning map, and zoning text amendment in order to facilitate 3 new 100% income-restricted buildings with 60 apartments and including 2,000 square feet of commercial space. Thank you. I'll take any questions.
Great. Thank you very much, Yuki. Very clear. Let me start with Commissioner Goodrich.
Mike, I think you can probably predict my question, which is the income. So I caught a snippet. So most of the apartments none of them are for extremely low income. The bulk of them are going to be for the moderate income. And I caught a snippet where the higher end, I think you said $1,400 for, I just want to have an idea of what that, oh, here we go, yeah. Okay, yes. I am a bit curious as to why most of them are none of them are extremely low income, and most of them are the low income, 50 to 80% AMI, which is going to be higher than, right, yeah. Because it's, it's for example.
Yeah, understood. Thank you, Commissioner Goodrich. I am going to let the applicant team speak to this one just because HPD is in charge of the financing and the unit distribution. So I'll leave it to that when they come for their public hearing and let them speak to the unit distribution on this one. Thanks.
Commissioner Benjamin?
Well, any of what we have seen change if City of Yes is approved? For instance, right now, the rear yards Right now, the rear yards all exceed 30 feet, but if that's approved, will the rear yards get smaller, and will the bulk be distributed in a downward direction, or do we not have any real information about what they might do?
So that's a great question, Commissioner Benjamin, and I don't have the exact answers. What I will say, there's two things at play here, which is both what might change under housing opportunity,
right.
And assuming components of it pass, but also the nature of the UDAP, which, as I'm sure you know, locks in, I think, specifically things to do with unit count, but there's a little bit of flexibility in it. If there are specific questions related to some of the kind of like zoning specifics about yard, was it rear yard? Were there other specific concerns?
No, rear yard.
Okay.
In specific.
I'm going to have to look up that rear yard question.
Because on the St. Mark's site in particular, they have a 50-foot rear yard. So they're building up taller, where it might be a little more in character if they had a smaller rear yard and move the bulk in it down. That's just where the question is going.
Okay.
And the second one is, I'm not sure why on the St. Mark's site, you included a commercial overlay.
Yeah.
When there's no commercial. There's only commercial on the Mother Gaston site, which has 2,000, I think, square feet or so of commercial.
So I believe, and I'll also let the applicant respond to that the commercial overlay, so though on the site itself it is city-owned vacant land, moving into the actual remainder of the area to be rezoned, there are multiple commercial properties. So this one is currently vacant, but you have the Dollar General right there, which is within the rezoning area.
Okay, I get it. These are taxpayers, though. What is the likelihood that these are going to remain here for the foreseeable future once we rezone them from the M to the R with the C overlay? I mean, it seems to me that these are likely to be going away.
Right. Well, I think, and you can, there's more information on that in the EAS, and we do have, I believe, this Dollar General as a projected development site, which you can look through the EAS and see that. And then a potential development site at the building right next to it. But by including the C24 overlay, it allows for ground floor commercial. So what we could see on this site is a Dollar General on the ground floor of a residential building, and we could have people living above and creating, you know, we have the nice commercial street wall, and we have people living above it in new homes.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. Let me go to Commissioner Marin, then Commissioner Kermani.
Thank you, Chair. Juki, thank you for the presentation. I have a question about building adjacencies and these windows that I'm looking at in a couple of, at least two of the sites. You have lot line windows and air conditioners that are sticking out of one of the buildings. And specifically on the St. Mark site, it seems that there's a brand new building with windows facing onto the property. Can you talk about those conditions? And in the renderings, if you go to page 24, it appears that the building is pulled away, that you don't see or know the amount of feet. What's going on with these adjacencies, and how is the plan? What is the plan to address this?
Commissioner Marin, I don't have an answer for that. I can ask the applicant to speak to that a little bit, and I can do some research on that one as well. But that's a great question. But this is the one specifically you're referring to.
There's two. This is one, and this is a brand new building with windows on the lot line. And then if you go to the previous, the smallest slide that was before this one, you have an industrial building that has windows and air conditioning cages sticking out of it. So that's a concern.
On the first one?
Yeah, I believe so. No.
Oh, wait, was it still on site 3?
No, site 2 and 3.
Okay.
I may be wrong, so it may be just site 3.
I think it might, this is the blank wall. And then
that one I question, but then I see the areaway where even if a building gets up against that wall, you still have, as usual in the past, the areaway that will give light and air. But I believe it is then slide 24 that has both.
Okay.
Again, it's something to address. Go back one. Go back 2. There you go. See,
got it. Yep.
But we're not building on that site. So
that's just vacant land.
Thank you. Then it's the only one of concern is where we're going up against the building, that brand new building with lot line windows.
Noted. Thanks, Commissioner.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Kermani.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the presentation. Just a question for the applicant. I would love to hear about the recruitment plan for the units within Brownsville, specifically recruiting applicants from the many NYCHA developments. There are absolutely, regardless of unit size and estimated rent, there are certainly folks who would qualify, and there are so many organizations that could help coordinate that recruitment. Absolutely.
Thanks, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Vice Chair Knuckles.
Thank you, Juki. Is this a common developer for all 3 sites?
Yes.
Okay, and so assuming approval, would construction ensue on all 3 simultaneously, or will it be sequenced?
I'm going to have to leave that to the applicant team to answer that question. I'm not sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Commissioner Osorio.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation, Yuki. I'm wondering if you can share with us any or the extent of discussions on what type of energy efficiency standards will be met here or proposed here at this point. Do you know?
I do not know. I may have to ask the applicant on that one, and I can also review some of the application materials and email you if there are any things I want to make sure we include.
Thank you. I think that, needless to say, given the scale of the proposal, this is a perfect opportunity to set in motion some of the new tools provided with City of Yes for carbon neutrality. I think that this should be ultra low energy, meet the ultra low energy standard, basically. But also, I wanted to ask you another thing. I mean, this is something to follow up with the applicant. In the EAS, development site C is the only one prompting an E designation, and there's some requirements in there about the use of natural gas for the HVAC system, and I want to know what is the plan and whether that will foreclose any opportunities for full electrification.
Thanks, Commissioner. I'm going to have to pass that along to the applicant team. Thank you.
Okay. That's all we've got for you, Juki. Thank you very much. This item is certified, and we'll move on to the next. Thank you. What's next?
The second item on our agenda is a certification of a UDOT designation, project approval, disposition of city-owned property, zoning map, zoning text, and city map amendments in Manhattan Community District 11. Our presenter is Trevor Levitz.
Hello, Trevor.
Hello. Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Afternoon.
Another UDAP for you. I'll jump right in with my intro spiel while we pull that up. The following is an application for 4 land use actions by the New York City Department of Housing, Preservation, and Development to facilitate a new 100% income-restricted housing development and renovated community facility space at today's HRA Multi-Service Center in East Harlem, Manhattan Community District 11. The proposed development is located at 413 East 120th Street between First and Palladino Avenues. To facilitate the project, HPD is requesting 4 land use actions: the designation of an urban development action area and project approval, and the disposition of city-owned land, known as a UDAP, the rezoning of portions of existing R7X and R72 districts with an R8 residential district, a zoning text amendment to Appendix F of the zoning resolution to map mandatory inclusionary housing, and a change to the city map. The proposed project would facilitate the infill development of the East Harlem Multi-Service Center parking lot with a 21-story residential tower containing 281 permanently income-restricted housing units and the rehabilitation and enlargement of the MSC. So in this map, we can see land uses surrounding the development site. South of the development site and south of East 120th Street, we see a largely pre-war context of row houses and multifamily walk-ups interspersed with community facility space. North of East 120th Street, you can see 2 super blocks which form NYCHA's Wagner Houses campus. The development site outlined in red is sort of nestled at the southernmost extent of the Wagner Houses, which in turn extend up to around 124th Street. You can also see in red there, the adjacent lot is a 12-story elevator building. This was the result of a previous HPD UDAP 2015 approval, and that project is known as Acacia Gardens. And here is a view of the zoning in the surrounding area. The development site sits in what is an extensive R72 district that extends up to East 124th Street and pretty far to the west, I think as far west as 3rd Avenue. However, south of 120th Street, we see largely contextual districts. These were established primarily in 2003 as the result of the 2003 East Harlem rezoning, not to be confused with the 2017 East Harlem rezoning. So we see R7B and R7A contextual residential districts mid-block, and along 1st Avenue, there's an R7X district, which encompasses part of the development site and the entirety of the adjacent lot. Generally, this R7X district encompasses 100 feet on either side of the avenue. We can see where it extends north of 120th Street, it bumps out a further 100 feet. This was also related to the Acacia Gardens project, in which HPD extended the zoning boundary of that R7X district to encompass the entirety of that development site. A little bit of background and timeline. The Multi-Service Center, that building was originally constructed as a New York City public school in the 1920s, PS 80. That ceased operations in the 70s, at which time ownership was transferred to New York City's Human Resource Administration, which established the multi-service center. HRA continues to operate the MSC to this day. About 12 not-for-profit providers are active on that site. This is a site that was, in 2016, identified by the community and relevant stakeholders as a site, publicly owned site for 100% affordable housing development. This was known as the East Harlem Neighborhood Plan, and it was intended to steer the recommendations of the subsequent DCP-led East Harlem rezoning, which occurred the following year in 2017. In the points of agreement for this rezoning, it was worked out with City Council and other stakeholders that 2 sites in Community District 11 would be subject to future RFPs by HPD for 100% affordable housing development. The parking lot of the multi-service center, the subject of today's application, was one of those 2 sites, and you may all recall the other site as Timbale Terrace, that was the 25th Precinct parking lot on Park Avenue. So subsequently, in 2019, HPD released requests for proposals for both sites. Together, they were aimed to bring over 600 new affordable homes to East Harlem. Worth noting that prior to the release of the RFP, multiple community visioning workshops were held, engaging community members and stakeholders about the desired program and site plan for both sites. The recommendations of these workshops were incorporated into the RFP, and aspects of them can be seen in today's proposal. And finally, in 2021, HPD selected Ascendant Neighborhood Development and the community builders as the development team for the redevelopment of the MSC site. Here we see an aerial view of the multi-service center. It's outlined in yellow. You can see the aforementioned Acacia Gardens immediately to the west. And behind that, the Wagner houses. They consist of about 26 buildings arranged in a tower in the park style. And behind that, you can see the various on and off ramps accessory to the Triborough Bridge at 125th Street. A couple of other notable features that are visible in this aerial view, multiple schools, community gardens, and at the top right there, you can see the East River Plaza Mall, which is a regionally important commercial hub. Not quite in this view, but beyond that is the FDR, and beyond that, of course, is the Harlem River. So going to some views of existing conditions. At the left here, we can see a direct view of today's MSC, the multi-service center. This is a view from 120th Street, facing north. And to the right there, you can see a view of the rear of the development site. That's a portion of the development site, including the surface parking accessory to the MSC. Here's a view from First Avenue facing west away from the development site. You can see a sort of new development that was built pursuant to the contextual R7X zoning district along First Avenue. And to the right is the context immediately facing the development site on East 120th Street. Looking south, you can see a pretty well-established pre-war brownstone context south of the development site. Existing conditions. As noted previously, the multi-service center is a roughly 80,000 square foot improvement that is home to 12 not-for-profit community organizations. We've outlined 2 portions of the MSC here in orange. These sort of wings of the existing MSC, which I believe are not original to the 1920s era structure, are slated to be demolished as part of this application to provide access and just clear the development site for the proposed residential development. So it is anticipated during the construction period, the 12 not-for-profits will be temporarily relocated to other sites nearby in East Harlem, and all will be invited to return to the completed and rehabilitated MSC. A prerequisite to this application is a change to the city map to clarify the boundaries of the UDAP area. This is important for future job filings, such as ADA accessible ramps and other features that are proposed to be incorporated in the proposed development. It's a little hard to make out in this view, but you might be able to see the black line outlined on this map. That is the current mapped street line. As you can see, the MSC actually encroaches into the mapped street currently. by about 11 feet, with portions of the facade actually jutting into the mapped street, not to mention the front yard of the MSC. HP therefore proposes to push the mapped street line, about 20 feet to the south, reducing the mapped width of East 120th Street from 80 feet to 60 feet. As you can see on this map, and the demapping area, by the way, is shown in this sort of dotted outline. The demapping area will also extend to First Avenue, including the street frontage in front of Acacia Gardens immediately to the west of the development site. It's important to be clear here that the demapping action is intended to bring the boundaries of the city map into consistency with the existing conditions of the street and will have no practical effect on the location of the curb or the roadbed. The portion of the East 120th Street fronting Acacia Gardens and the development site sort of bumps out in today's street about 20 feet and then dips back in front of the Wagner houses. This will clarify the city map boundaries and sort of reflect the actual built condition of the street. You can see here the proposed UDAP area in this map at top left. Outlined is not only the development site, but also the demapping area that is part of the previous action on the previous slide is incorporated into the UDAP area in this application. So HPD proposes to rezone portions of the existing R7X and R72 districts with an R8 zoning district. As discussed previously, the R7X district bumps out an additional 100 feet from the the regular 100 feet boundary of the district. So it extends about 200 feet into East 120th Street, covering portions of the development site. The applicant proposes essentially to bring that R7X district boundary back into alignment with the rest of the R7X district, as you can see, south of East 120th Street, and then remap a portion of the adjacent R72 district that covers the entirety of the balance of the development site with an R8 zoning district. A note about R8 districts: these are high-density residential districts. They're mapped elsewhere in Community District 11. You can find them along Park Avenue in particular. They generally facilitate mid-rise 8 to 10-story apartment buildings or taller buildings built pursuant to height factor bulk regulations, which are set back on the street on large zoning lots. Residential developments complying with the inclusionary housing program are permitted at a maximum FAR of 7.2 in R8 zoning districts. Under quality housing regulations, the minimum and maximum base heights of buildings are 60 to 105 feet, respectively, if providing a qualifying ground floor. R8 buildings can rise to a maximum height of 215 feet. Community facilities uses are permitted at a maximum FAR of 6.5. The bulk of the proposed development would be built as of right pursuant to the proposed R8 zoning district, and you can see the massing here. It would contain 281 income-restricted housing units and 50,000 square feet of community facility space across a total of 280,000 square feet. You can see the proposed residential building is sort of L-shaped, wrapping around the MSC, with a 17-story wing along the western portion of the lot and a 21-story portion in the rear of the lot. A roughly 2,000 square feet court will be provided between the residential development and the MSC building. Here's a site plan. A little hard to make out the exact stories. Also want to note here, if you look at the eastern portion of the lot, you can see the applicant proposes to enhance connections to the adjacent Wagner houses through an exterior pathway they have named the Wagner Walk. This is built pursuant to NYCHA's Connected Communities guidebook. And you can also see the inner court there between the existing MSC building and the rear portion of the residential development. So in addition to a gut renovation of the existing multi-service center building, the applicant proposes to vertically enlarge the existing 5-story improvement with a 6th floor. This will feature an educational greenhouse, a basketball court, and other community amenities. Pursuant to Local Law 78, a racial equity report was required for this project as a disposition of land to facilitate a project containing more than 50,000 square feet of residential floor area. East Harlem North, that's the neighborhood tabulation area in which the proposed development is located, is classified as higher risk within the displacement risk index, shown in this purple shade on the map. A plurality of residents in East Harlem North are Hispanic or Latino. This is greater than the Manhattan and citywide averages. That's the purple bar on this bar chart. Notably, African American residents make up roughly a quarter of East Harlem residents, which is also greater than citywide and Manhattan averages. Looking at population trends and demographic changes between 2010 and 2020, we can see looking far right, on the far right bar chart, increases in the white non-Hispanic population. Second from the left, increases in the Asian non-Hispanic population expressed as a total percentage of the demographic makeup, with concomitant decreases in the Black non-Hispanic and Hispanic Latino populations. The proposed development will be financed through HPD's extremely low and low income affordability term sheet, also known as ELA. As such, 15% of the units will be set aside to formerly homeless households. All units will have rents affordable to households earning no more than 80% of the area median income, and will feature a mix of studios and 1 and 2 bedrooms. Relating this back to the findings of the racial equity report, HPD believes that by providing units that are affordable to AMIs that are realistic to the incomes of area residents, the proposed development will help combat displacement pressures in East Harlem North. In summary, approval of the actions would facilitate the infill development of the HRA Multi-Service Center parking lot with a 21-story, 215 feet tall building containing approximately 270,000 total square feet, 281 income-restricted housing units, and the renovation of the multi-service center and its enlargement. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you. I'm going to start with this one. Just a quick clarification. The change in the map you noted would take the map street from 80 feet to 60 feet, but would have no actual impact on the existing curb or roadbed, correct?
That's correct.
But there are a couple of additional changes that would add or change the open space in and around this development. One of them is the inner court between the existing multi-service center and the new building. And then you also described a Wagner Walk.
Yes.
Can you just show us the Wagner Walk again, because I want to make sure that I understand where it is and how it interacts?
Sure. So this is the site plan. You can see the multi-service center at bottom, and if you look directly to the right of that, it's labeled exterior pathway. That is the Wagner Walk. It actually does connect to East 120th Street, and then I guess essentially flows into the Wagner House campus. And if we return to this view, you can see it sort of goes under, actually, the 21-story portion of the proposed residential development.
I see. So the Wagner Walk there, it's on the 120th Street side.
Right.
Can you give us the context map again, or the existing conditions, or wherever we could see how that would interact with the next door neighbors?
Well, here's a rendering of the Wagner Walk, and I can return to the...
So I'm looking at the building right through the Wagner Walk on the bottom image here?
That's right.
Okay.
And you're able to see the renovated multi-service center at the top view, and the Wagner Walk would be to the right of that. I don't know if we have any other photos that would help clarify what that looks like.
Okay, stop right there for a sec. Okay, so there's the Wagner houses right there. The space just to the right of the development site and between the development site and Wagner houses, what is that?
Immediately closest to the Wagner houses, that's parking for NYCHA residents. then you can sort of see that greenish band. I think that's just underutilized space that is part of the current multi-service center lot.
Okay, so future condition would be parking, underutilized green, and then Wagner Walk, which goes north-south, hugging the side of the multi-service center, and the new building going right underneath it too. Is that right?
That's right, except this purple outline isn't exactly coterminous with the development site, so that underutilized band of green, I think portions of that would be the...
Oh, I see. So that becomes part of this. Okay.
Walk.
All right. Okay. I got it. Let me see if there are other questions. Commissioner Osorio.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. Really not a question for now, but when we see it later, it would be great to understand in a little more detail what are the strategies that are going to be deployed to respond to the significance of the flooding threat here. I mean, I'm specifically interested in understanding, in addition to the requirements that, apply here for hydrostatic pressure and so forth for the retention tank that will be created for stormwater, and just in terms of how the first floors, and so on will be treated. I'm interested in understanding, how is the design going to respond to this, unique situation where the flooding may be coming or the coastal inundation may be coming from 3 different sides, right? So I want to understand a little bit, how are we, given the fact that this is within the waterfront, the coastal zone, therefore subject to the waterfront revitalization program, to what extent is urban design responding to sort of like all of these things as a system? The landscape design, whether or not we're using any type of green infrastructure, with the more traditional engineering that is being laid out.
Thank you, Commissioner. Sorry, I will be sure to have the applicant team speak to that.
Great, thank you. And then the same question that, I asked in the previous one, like I want to understand in a little more detail what's the energy efficiency standard that is being proposed for the buildings. Thank you.
Thank you. We do know that from the applicant's materials that it will achieve passive house design standards, and that includes the multi-service center, which will be rehabilitated to achieve those standards.
Thank you. If we can get a little more detail on that. Also, correct me, but I didn't see anything on renewables, but is there? Are there any proposed? Yeah.
I'm not sure. We'll have to have that.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Terrific. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This item is now certified, and we'll move on to item number 3 today, in College Point, Queens.
The third item on our agenda is a certification of a zoning map and zoning text amendments in Queens Community District 7. Our presenter is Joy Chen.
Hi there. Welcome.
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone.
Afternoon.
This is a private application for a zoning map amendment from an R4A C13 zoning district to an R6A C24 zoning district, and a zoning text amendment to establish an MIH area at 122-03 14th Avenue in College Point, Community District 7, Queens. The project area is located in the heart of College Point, which is known for its ethnically diverse mix of residential, commercial, and industrial uses. College Point sits along Flushing Bay and directly overlooks LaGuardia Airport and the skyline of Manhattan. To the north is the Bronx and the Whitestone Bridge. The zoning and land use map shows that the project area was designated R4A C13 in 2005 as part of the College Point rezoning, a city-sponsored rezoning of an approximately 161 block area to preserve the predominantly single 1- and 2-family detached buildings prevalent here, and to also reflect the built character of College Point Boulevard, the area's primary commercial corridor. The blocks located to the north and east of the rezoning area are comprised mostly of 1- to 2-family and multifamily residential buildings ranging from 1 to 3 stories in height, as well as several public facilities and historic landmarks. Immediately west of the rezoning area is College Point Park. College Point Boulevard, south of the rezoning area, includes a mix of local retail uses such as grocery stores, drugstores, and restaurants. Buildings range from 1 to 4 stories with ground floor retail uses and residential apartments above. This is a photo showing the development site, which is contiguous with the rezoning area, and this view faces northeast from College Point Boulevard. You'll see that the development site currently consists of a 1-story commercial building. It's an office building with parking behind it and a 2-story church. This is a view of the development site facing northwest, so it's from behind the office building and the church from 14th Avenue. And this is a view of the sidewalk along the west side of 123rd Street facing north from 14th Avenue. The proposed rezoning from an existing R4A C13 zoning district to an R6A C24 zoning district would facilitate the development of a new 6-story mixed-use building with approximately 76,321 square feet, 3.6 FAR floor area. It would have approximately 70,000 square feet of residential floor area with 103 dwelling units, including 31 permanently affordable income restricted units pursuant to MIH option 2, and approximately 6,000 square feet of commercial area would also be provided on the ground floor. The maximum building height would be 65 feet and setbacks would be provided above the base height at all building frontages. In R6A zoning districts, parking is required for 50% of the market rate units and 25% of the income restricted units. And based on the applicant's proposal, 44 parking spaces would be required, but the applicants are providing 52 spaces accessible at the cellar level from 123rd Street. And from the illustrative site plan, you can see the different access exits and entrances both to the cellar parking in the rear and the commercial uses along College Point Boulevard and the residential uses with the entrance and exit at 14th Avenue. The proposed zoning map amendment is necessary to facilitate the proposed development. The proposed R6A zoning district is a medium-density contextual district that produces high lot coverage 6 to 8-story apartment buildings set at or near the street line. The proposed C24 commercial overlay district allows local retail uses with a maximum commercial FAR of 2 when mapped within an R6A zoning district. The proposed zoning text amendment would establish an MIH area contiguous with the rezoning area. Although the applicants are proposing to map both MIH options 1 and 2, they intend to build under MIH option 2. This application requires a racial equity report because it would increase the residential floor area by at least 50,000 square feet. The estimated median income for Queens Community District 7 is approximately $62,022, which is lower than the AMIs for the Borough of Queens and New York City overall. Under MIH option 2, the applicant proposes to provide 31 income restricted units at an average of 60 to 100% AMI, with estimated monthly rents ranging from $1,630 for studios to $4,040 for 3-bedroom units, at estimated average incomes ranging from $65,200 for a 1-person household to $167,700 for a 5-person household based on 2023 figures. Of the approximately 270,930 residents within Queens Community District 7, 57.4% identified as Asian non-Hispanic, 20.6% identified as white non-Hispanic, 18.1% identified as Hispanic, and 2% identified as Black non-Hispanic, with 1.9% other races. The Asian population in the area makes up more than double its percentage of the population compared to all of Queens and more than triple its percentage of the population compared to all of New York City. Between 2010 and 2020, the district saw a 9.1 increase in total population. This included a 26% increase in the Asian population and a 19% increase in the Hispanic population, while the Black population decreased by 2% and the white population decreased by 24%. In conclusion, the proposed zoning map amendment from an R4A C13 zoning district to an R6A C24 zoning district and a zoning text amendment to establish an MIH area would facilitate the development of a new 6-story mixed-use building on an underutilized site and produce 31 new permanently income-restricted units. These proposed actions would increase the supply of rental units, including much-needed income-restricted units in substantially less transit-accessible areas of Queens, such as here at the intersection of College Point Boulevard and 14th Avenue in College Point. This concludes my presentation. Thank you very much, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Thanks, Joy. Just note, the current situation on the site, there's one commercial building and a church, is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. There it is. Okay, and the parking spaces that are proposed here is something above the minimum number, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Just noting, again, that it is not an unusual circumstance for a developer to include more parking spaces above what the mandatory minimum number is. Okay, let me go to Commissioner Benjamin.
Two quick questions. The first is, I know you may not have this information now, but I would like to know, because we're doing MIH, what is the market rate rental prices generally in this area?
Yeah, I don't have the specific figures on me, but they are generally lower than in downtown Flushing. But yeah, it's I will get those figures.
Okay, thank you. And the second is, if City of Yes Housing Opportunities is adopted, as is for a moment, what could change in this proposed development?
Well, the first thing is parking would not be required, which they would be very upset. I mean, the community would probably be upset about here. But the other thing is
they could do it as of right, is that correct?
Yeah, they would do it as of right. And then for the FAR, it would increase to 3.9, and right now the maximum is 3.6. And the maximum height could go all the way up to 95 feet, and right now, under R6A, the maximum height is 65 feet.
And those changes in design would all be as of right if it were approved and City of Yes were approved. There would be no further site controls on the city's part, is there?
No. I mean, like,
because it's a rezoning.
Yeah, it's a rezoning. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right, Joy, thank you. This item is certified.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to the next item today, item 4.
Fourth item on our agenda is a non-ULURP post-referral of an authorization in Brooklyn Community District 8. Our presenter is Jordan Frum.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chair Gorodnick and Commissioners. I will wait for this to come up. There we go. Okay, good afternoon. Today I will be presenting a fresh authorization application that is here for post-referral at 1034 to 1042 Atlantic Avenue in Brooklyn. This project is located within Community District 8 in the northwestern part of the Crown Heights neighborhood. It's in Council District 35, represented by Crystal Hudson. This is a private application by EMP Capital to build an 18-story residential building of 180,146 square feet, which includes 7,393 square feet for a fresh food store. This application requires a CPC zoning authorization to allow the increase of the maximum building height by up to 15 feet or 1 story. A zoning map amendment, text amendment, and special permit to facilitate the underlying 17-story building were approved by CPC in 2022. The proposed development is located within the northwest portion of Crown Heights and borders the southern boundary between Clinton Hill and Bedford-Stuyvesant. The project area is bounded by Atlantic Avenue on the north, Pacific Street on the south, Grand Street on the west, and Classen Avenue on the east. 4 bus lines, including the B48, B25, B26, and B65, are within 600 feet of the project, as well as the Franklin Avenue stop on the C and S trains. The project area is also located within the Atlantic Avenue Mixed-Use Plan, or AMUP, study area, highlighted in a black dashed line with a light blue fill on this map. I will talk more about AMUP shortly. The proposed project would fill a major gap in access to grocery stores along the Atlantic Avenue corridor in this part of Brooklyn. Currently, aside from a store on Fulton Street, there are no supermarkets between a Stop and Shop at Atlantic Terminal, that's on the upper left-hand corner of the map, and a Lincoln Market at the corner of Franklin Avenue, which is number 6 on the upper right-hand corner of the map. In addition, other fresh applications have been filed within the vicinity of the project area, included a completed one at 1535 Bedford Avenue at the corner of Eastern Parkway, an approved store at 805 Washington Avenue, and 2 pending stores at 953 Dean Street and 870-888 Atlantic Avenue. Since this application is located within the AMUP area, department staff would like to share a brief update on the status of the neighborhood plan, which is anticipated to certify and enter public review in the next couple months. Given all the work DCP has been doing in this neighborhood, we'd like to explain how this development fits into a broader context and vision for the area. Since 2015, the department has been engaged with Brooklyn's Community Board 8 to re-envision the M11 area surrounding the project area, known as M-Crown, for a mix of job and housing growth, which culminated in the release of a framework in 2018 to help reach consensus and guide private applications. In 2022, the department and council member Crystal Hudson announced that M-Crown was becoming the Atlantic Avenue Mixed-Use Plan, or AMUP, and in autumn 2023, the department released a draft zoning framework, which you see on this slide. Currently, we are preparing a land use application, finalizing the draft EIS, and coordinating with other agencies to advance certain priorities that were raised during the engagement process. As you can see, the zoning framework identified sub-areas to promote different types of growth, recommending higher density along Atlantic Avenue while having height and density step down in the north-south avenues and mid-block side streets. 1034 to 1042 Atlantic Avenue is split between the proposed C63A zone along Atlantic Avenue and the proposed M14R6A zoning district west of Classen Avenue between Atlantic Avenue and Bergen Street. The department believes that the proposed AMUP zoning is well aligned with the applicant's proposal. In AMUP, we are proposing a special district that would use the new heights and FARs associated with the City of Yes Housing Opportunity text amendment. A change from the current R7A C42 zoning district to M14R6A on the southern half of the lot would also allow developers to mix certain light industrial uses with residential ones, expanded from the mix of commercial and residential uses allowed today. The immediate surrounding area primarily consists of industrial, commercial, 1- and 2-family residences, multifamily residences, mixed commercial and residential buildings, and vacant land. The project area is located in C63A and R7A C24 zoning districts. C63A is a high-density commercial zoning district that allows residential uses up to an FAR of 8.5, or an R9A equivalent, commercial uses up to an FAR of 6.0, and community facility uses up to an FAR of 7.5. R7A is a medium-density residential district that allows residential uses up to an FAR of 4.6 and community facility uses up to an FAR of 4.0. C24 is a commercial overlay mapped in conjunction with residential districts and permits commercial uses at a maximum 2 FAR when mapped in R6 to R10 districts. The surrounding area has been subject to multiple private rezoning actions in recent years. Since 2019, on the same block as or on adjacent blocks to the proposed project, the 1010 Pacific Street, 1050 Pacific Street, and Grandin Pacific rezonings have mapped R7A C24, M14R7A, and R7AC24 districts, respectively. Slightly farther afield, but still within a half-mile radius, since 2017, rezonings at 840 Atlantic Avenue, 870 to 888 Atlantic Avenue, 1045 Atlantic Avenue, and 1350 Bedford Avenue have mapped C63X, C63A, C63A, and R7D districts, respectively. In large part, the piecemeal nature of private rezonings applications in this area in recent years is what encouraged DCP, along with local stakeholders, to pursue a unified, cohesive neighborhood plan for this area. The underlying building, 1034 to 1042 Atlantic Avenue, was subject to a zoning map and text amendment and zoning special permit to facilitate the development of a 17-story mixed-use building containing 210 dwelling units, approximately 2,580 square feet of community facility floor area, and 11,900 square feet of commercial floor area in 2022. The applicants also sought a special permit to provide a parking waiver from 57 to 68 down to 20 spaces. The existing building was developed by the same applicant as the team behind today's fresh authorization. Now look at some photos of the project area. This is a view southwest from Atlantic Avenue, looking directly onto the project site. This is a view east along Atlantic Avenue with the project site outlined in yellow dashed line on the right. This is the view northeast from Pacific Street, looking at the back of the project site, across the building that you can see there in the sort of upper left corner, across Atlantic Avenue. And this is what the building looks like more recently. Construction has been ongoing for several months on this building, facilitated by the rezoning that allowed the 17-story building, and so that's been ongoing for some months. And this is a recent photo that the applicant provided us of what it looks like. As I stated before, this authorization will facilitate an 18-story mixed-use building with a total of 180,146 square feet of floor area. Of that, 168,905 square feet will be residential floor area, resulting in 247 dwelling units, 47 of which will be affordable pursuant to MIH, 11,242 square feet of commercial floor area, 7,393 of which is allocated to the fresh food store, and 39 accessory parking spaces, 20 of which are required. The proposed fresh grocery store is outlined in red on this map and will total almost 7,400 square feet with entry and exit from Atlantic Avenue. Vehicle access to the building for residents will be located on Pacific Street, and the supermarket loading and unloading will be on the Atlantic Avenue curb. In conjunction with the chair certification for a floor area bonus, the applicant is requesting an authorization for additional height. A CPC authorization is required to facilitate this project to modify maximum building height pursuant to ZR 6322. There are three necessary findings. First, the Commission must find that the modifications are necessary to accommodate a first story utilized as a fresh food store. The applicant has responded that without the additional height and ability to accommodate the reallocated fresh floor area, the provision of a fresh food store would not be economically viable, and the project could not proceed as currently proposed. Second, the proposed modification should not adversely affect the essential scale and character of the adjacent buildings and any adjacent historic resources. The applicant has stated that Atlantic Avenue is a major thoroughfare in an area that contains a mix of high-density, multifamily, and mixed commercial and residential uses. Moreover, the Department of City Planning has proposed the Atlantic Avenue mixed-use plan, which would map a C63A zoning district along Atlantic Avenue, and the proposed development falls within the AMUP area. Third, the proposed modifications must not unduly obstruct access to light and air of adjacent properties. The applicant has stated that the 120-foot wide width of Atlantic Avenue provides ample opportunity for light and air to adjacent buildings, and shadow studies showed minimal impact on sensitive nearby properties. On July 31st, this application was referred out to the public for 45 days. In order to avoid having to wait until the end of the Community Board summer recess, the applicants presented to Brooklyn Community Board 8's Land Use Committee on June 6, 2024, before the application was formally referred. The committee voted to recommend approval. At a full board meeting 1 week later, Community Board 8 voted 22 to 10 to recommend approval of the application on the condition that the tenant hire locally from within the boundaries of Community Board 8 and make their absolute strongest effort to provide free or low-cost delivery services to cover the lack of supermarket parking spaces at the site. In conclusion, the proposed action would facilitate the development of an 18-story mixed-use building with 247 dwelling units and a 7,393 square foot fresh food store. The proposed building would be permitted to increase its height by 15 feet beyond what is currently allowed on the property. Thank you, and I'm happy to take questions.
Great, thank you very much. We'll start with Commissioner Ramprashad and then Commissioner Benjamin.
Thank you for the presentation. I have a few questions. Number one, I know you showed the photograph of what it looks like today. How would this impact their timeline to complete the project in terms of adding the additional floor? Or do you know what floor they're at and if they're currently working today?
I believe they are currently working today and according to the developer or according to the applicant, they are close to being finished with the 17-story building that was originally approved.
Okay, I was just curious in terms of construction-wise, because it looks like it's reinforced concrete. Question I have for you also is, the 7,393 square footage, does that include the cellar for the fresh food? Or
no,
is that
that's just on the first floor. There's additional there's additional square footage in the cellar.
And how is that compared to the other several sites? I think it was slide 5, you were showing the other locations, some are pending. How is that in comparison to the other fresh? Do we know the square footages of the proposed? Like, for example, in 870, 888 Atlantic, and also at Dean Street?
Right. Dean Street, I think, is also about 6,000 or 7,000 square feet, is the total square footage of the the proposed fresh food store for 953 Dean. Not sure about 870 to 888 Atlantic. I think it's, yeah, I don't want to, I can ask my colleague who's shepherding that one through the process.
And one last comment. Do you know the tenant they have for the space, and they're in a long-term lease?
There is a letter of intent. It is signed by someone who operates grocery stores under a bunch of different names at a bunch of different locations, and the applicant has not given the specific name of what brand of grocery store would be on this site, but they have signed a letter with a specific
with the time frame
tenant.
Okay. Do they know the time frame of if that tenant takes it over? Is it a 20-year lease, or is it?
I don't know off the top of my head. I can look.
Okay. That's it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Commissioner. Let me note that Commissioner Dweck is recused on this item. Let me go to Commissioner Benjamin.
Thank you very much for the presentation. As I've stated before, when we've seen these proposals for fresh stores, I feel like we're moving backwards. Number one, because the fresh stores, which were meant to bring enhanced shopping opportunities, the ones that we've seen tend to be very small. They're not full-service supermarkets. And they introduce another element that people really dislike in this particular proposal, which is there is no loading. It's going to be over the sidewalk, which is something that we had hoped that supermarkets would no longer be doing, as it constitutes both a problem for pedestrians, but also for the goods that can sit outside while they're waiting for somebody to come and bring them either down or in. So just as a matter of policy, I have concerns about how and where the fresh is being used and whether it's really satisfying the desires that we had for real full-service supermarkets. When you say that this is an entity that goes by a variety of names, are we talking about a variety of names like Mr. Mango or Lincoln Market, which are not full-service supermarkets, even though Lincoln Market, unfortunately, I live down the block from this, so I do know this site. Lincoln Market is not a full-service supermarket, although it's probably about 5,000 square feet. So this is more of a general comment about fresh, that in return for giving us a below-average market, they're getting an extra floor. And I find that problematic. I also find problematic that they have, in certain ways, they've created they want 11 and proposed 11,000 square feet of commercial. Really, they thought that they had some use for that commercial. And since the building is almost topped out, what would they do with that commercial if they don't get this authorization certification with that 11,000 square feet? And I know that's not something you can necessarily answer, but if you could pass that on, that given my concerns about Fresh, what are they going to do with 11,000 square feet of commercial on Atlantic Avenue if they don't get this?
Thank you.
I mean, also in terms of the findings we have to make, while there isn't another close by on Atlantic Avenue, although they are building on Atlantic between Classen and Franklin on the north side of the street, there's a big development going up. They are building on Pacific. And we approved a development on Pacific Street. And there are developments now on the 953 Dean Street. So did we look at, on Pacific Street, whether this Atlantic Avenue additional story would affect the Pacific Street developments?
I don't know if the sort of shadow or light and air calculations accounted specifically for that building across Pacific, but I can take a look.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
But thank you, Commissioner, but let me probe on that for a second. But when you looked at the question about whether it would unduly impact light and air in the area, what did you learn?
I think the majority of the applicants let me see if I can find so on the right is the elevation drawing showing the proposed 16-story. As you can see, it's a two-tower development with the 18-story tower facing Atlantic. The side facing Pacific is much shorter, and so the shadow impacts of the taller tower were the applicant phrased the shadow impacts of the taller tower largely in terms of Atlantic being a 120-foot wide street and not causing undue shadow impacts in that direction.
Okay, let's talk about let me talk about the question about loading for a second.
Sure.
Is there a requirement? I mean, there's no finding here that relates to loading specifically.
That's correct.
So there's no requirement that a Fresh store have side loading or rear loading or something along those lines. Is that right?
That's correct.
What are the requirements? Can you remind us for what the requirements are for a Fresh store itself once it is approved?
So the chair certification is just a 1-for-1 FAR bonus, right? And then the authorization, which is the matter that's before the commission, is whether these three conditions here have been met, that the modifications are necessary for the store to accommodate the store and that the store would not be feasible without it, that the modifications would not adversely affect scale and character of the adjacent buildings or adjacent resources, and that the modifications would not unduly obstruct access to light and air of adjacent
Yes, but there's specific requirements about the store itself, correct?
I see.
There, you have to provide certain things in the store.
A certain amount of square footage. I believe it has to be at least 6,000 square feet. A certain amount of that has to be perishable, fresh fruits and vegetables. A certain other portion has to be milk and, dairy and meat. It has to have a variety of products.
Right. So even something which is not a full supermarket by, I don't know by what definition, it must include perishable products by a certain percentage. It has certain rules and regulations as to what it must work. Okay. Yeah. All right. Let's see if there are other questions. Commissioner Osorio.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the presentation. Two quick questions. One, do you know why the 10 people that voted against? Like, what were their concerns?
Their concerns, I think, generally had to do, and I was not at the community board meeting the night that the full board took a vote. I was only there the night that the land use committee took a vote. My understanding is it was a combination of apprehension about the overall scale of new development in this area and desire to weight on, desire to not move forward with anything that would increase height or bulk while AMUP was under consideration, right? That basically that with this application, they would be giving the applicant permission to build an 18-story right before a comprehensive neighborhood plan enters the ULURP process.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And then building on the questions that Commissioner Benjamin put forth, the letter of intent to lease, which, the first thing that I wanted to note is that according to the actual requirement, which, first states requires a signed lease or some type of written standard, there's a big difference between the two.
Right.
And I think, that gives the chair discretion in terms of like whether the written statement would suffice. But just in terms of the written statement provided, there are at least five properties, all in Brooklyn. Do you have, the document doesn't include anything else about them? To Commissioner Benjamin's question, is there something you have or that we could request just to understand what type of establishments are these, like in terms of their characteristics, their size?
Sure, absolutely. I know that one of them is a fine fare. That's, I believe, the one that was cited at the Community Board Land Use Committee, but I can ask the applicant to provide us with a full accounting, if you'd like, of all of these grocery stores that are listed and what type of grocery stores there are.
Okay, thank you.
Grocery stores
and also, if you can confirm to Commissioner Rampershad's question, this document says that the term is a 20-year lease with 10-year renewal option.
Yep,
is that right?
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks. Is that right, or are you going to confirm?
No, I can confirm.
Okay,
I can ask the applicant
and
find out how long the lease is.
Great. So thank you for following up on those. We will schedule this one for a vote, and I'll also just give you an opportunity, since it passed with the community board, if you want to weigh in on why the 22 people voted to approve the application at the community board, just to give equal time here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the people in the community board felt that, this is generally a neighborhood that lacks grocery stores, and also, as I said in the presentation, the 17 or 18-story buildings here along Atlantic Avenue are generally aligned with the AMUP vision for the neighborhood, right? This is not something that's wildly out of whack with what we expect to be built here in the future. And this also, I think, many people on the community board saw this as a largely ministerial approval, right? It's not something that requires a ton of discretionary judgment on their part. It's have the conditions been met, and if so, then you vote yes. And that was how the applicant explained it to the community board.
Great. All right, we will schedule this for a vote, and we'll do some follow-ups here. Thank you very much, and we will move on to the next item. Sarah, thank you.
The fifth item on our agenda is a non-ULURP post-referral of an authorization in Manhattan Community District 7. Our presenter is Chelsea Evans.
Hi, Chelsea.
Hi, good afternoon. Okay. This is a post-referral presentation for a private application by Bell Nord Retail LLC requesting a zoning authorization pursuant to ZR 132-213 to allow a bank tenant to exceed the 25-foot maximum street wall width. This application would allow a bank with a street frontage of 46 feet and 3 inches to locate along Broadway within the Special Enhanced Commercial District 3. Currently, only 25 feet of street frontage is permitted for a bank along Broadway. Manhattan Community Board 7 did not submit a recommendation during the formal referral period. However, prior to certification and in anticipation of their summer recess, the board voted to recommend approval of the application by unanimous vote of 38 in favor. Pursuant to ZR 132-213, the City Planning Commission may authorize a modification of the maximum street wall width if the applicant meets one of the following findings. A, that such additional frontage is required for the operation of the proposed use, or B, that a high ground floor vacancy rate exists within a reasonable distance of the proposed uses, and that such high vacancy rate is a consequence of adverse market conditions. The applicant is pursuing this authorization pursuant to finding B. The terms reasonable distance and high vacancy rate are not defined in the zoning resolution. At the time of the establishment of the special district, Community Board 7 recommended that 15% retail vacancy would satisfy this requirement. The department has previously stated that a healthy vacancy rate is between 5 and 10%. Currently, 26% of the retail frontages within the surrounding Special Enhanced Commercial Districts 2 and 3 are vacant, and along Broadway, within the Special Enhanced Commercial District 3, the retail vacancy rate is 14.8%. In summary, the applicant, Belnord Retail LLC, is requesting a zoning authorization to allow a bank tenant to occupy more than 25 feet of street frontage along Broadway. The applicant has submitted a vacancy analysis, which is included in your briefing packet, to support finding B. Thank you, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Do you know how long this has been vacant?
It's been vacant since 2012.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Okay, thanks. We'll schedule this one for a vote. Thank you. All right, let's move on to the next.
The sixth item on our agenda is a pre-hearing review of a special permit zoning text and city map amendments in Manhattan Community District 4. Our presenter is Ben Huff.
Hello, Ben. Welcome back.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Afternoon.
Okay. So the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey is seeking multiple actions to facilitate the development of a new Midtown bus terminal. The Port Authority is proposing to develop a new modern bus terminal that will meet the needs of our growing city and region while adapting to the future with sustainable design features and improved accessibility. This proposed facility would replace the current Port Authority bus terminal, enabling a significant transformation for West Midtown. For this new facility, there are 3 requested actions that the Port Authority is seeking. A zoning text amendment that will incorporate a new section to the bus station special permit with updated findings related to modern bus facility located in Community District 4. Authorize the development of portions of a bus terminal in demapped airspaces, and to authorize the modification of regulations related to any use on the zoning lot. A special permit, as modified by the proposed text amendment, to allow the construction of a bus station with appropriate capacity, to allow a building to be built within demapped airspace, to allow the distribution of floor area without regard to zoning district boundaries, and to modify regulations to facilitate the development of commercial towers on the site. And a city map amendment involving the elimination of specific volumes on portions of streets and avenues and the disposition of such demapped areas to the Port Authority. With approval of the requested actions, the development site would be considered a single zoning lot. So as we saw at certification, the current bus terminal is an outdated structure that is increasingly difficult to maintain and provide level of service for the hundreds of thousands of daily users. The current terminal is unable to meet projected future ridership demand, and any significant upgrades would result in a loss of gates, thus further reducing capacity. The extensive ramp structures and blank walls of the current terminal divide the neighborhood and hinder efforts to enhance the pedestrian experience. The Port Authority has decided to advance a replacement facility that will consist of a new bus terminal that will meet the projected transit needs and provide an improved, modernized experience for riders. The facility would reduce bus circulation and idling on neighborhood streets, enhance the public realm of West Midtown, improve pedestrian circulation, add street-facing retail, and reinforce the civic importance of the site with world-class architectural design. The proposed bus terminal would consist of the main terminal, reconstructed between 8th and 9th Avenue, which will include the main passenger area and all future bus gates. This new terminal will include significant design and operational improvements to facilitate a more efficient bus operation. Also along 8th Avenue and above the main terminal, 2 commercial office towers would be developed by a private developer after the completion of the terminal. The towers would be accessible by lobbies at the ground floor that would be separated from the main terminal area. Connected by an overstreet bridge that traverses 9th Avenue and 40th Street, the Port will construct a bus storage and staging facility. This will allow the port to consolidate storage for midday bus parking between peak demand periods, as well as staging or short-term dwelling of buses waiting to access the assigned gates. Currently, these operations happen outside the facility. West of 10th Avenue would be the helix-shaped ramp structure connecting the Lincoln Tunnel to the rest of the facility. This structure would be far more orderly and extensive than the twisting ramps that currently exist. The ramp structure would accommodate nearly all bus movements from the Lincoln Tunnel into the main terminal. Separate from this application, the Port Authority would deck over two sections of the below-grade Dyer Avenue cut between 39th and 37th Street and use this space for construction, staging, and bus operations during development. It is expected that the Port Authority will turn this property into a 3.5-acre open space upon completion of the new terminal. The proposed bus terminal would have a new, larger building that would increase capacity for both peak hour buses and total passengers served from 260,000 daily riders to a projected 337,000 in the future. 5 levels of buses and pedestrian queuing areas, 40 gates allocated for intercity buses that currently pick up and drop off in West Midtown, a grand main entrance at 8th Avenue, space for 350 buses in the storage and staging facility, a large expansion of pedestrian circulation and retail space, including street-facing retail to activate blank corridors, additional queuing space, ADA compliance, and modernized signage and wayfinding. The key to this proposal is the increased space for buses and passengers within the facility for a more efficient operation. This illustration shows towers that could be constructed over the main terminal pursuant to the proposed special permit. The purpose of the towers is to fund the development and operational costs of the terminal, the mechanism of which was codified in a pilot agreement with the city negotiated earlier this year. As discussed at certification, the drawings submitted with the application depict only maximum building envelopes. The tower's maximum height would be 1,346 and 926 feet, respectively, and contain approximately 5 million square feet. So now I will go into detail on the zoning actions. So this slide shows a condensed version of the findings that the department, working with the Port Authority, created to update the text and reflect the department's considerations. The findings include many transportation-specific elements, like addressing traffic congestion, traffic volumes, and local street impacts. But I'd like to highlight bullets 3, 4, and 5, as these include findings that focus on design and the public realm, pedestrian circulation, open spaces, and the civic importance of the site. The department believes that this is, as the nation's largest and busiest bus terminal, the facility needs to be designed in a manner that reflects the importance of the site, both for the city and the region, while facilitating the movement of users and pedestrians in the public and circulation spaces. The second set of findings is related to the proposed overbuild towers. Because this is a final phase of the project and pending selection of a private developer via an RFP process, the port is seeking flexibility in how they would be developed in relation to the zoning regulations. The buildings would require modifications to height and setback regulations, pedestrian and circulation space, and daylight compensation. The special permit, pursuant to Section 74145 as amended, is to construct a bus facility of the appropriate size in commercial and manufacturing districts in CB4 Manhattan. I've included a small screenshot of the text showing the section created for the bus terminal we are discussing today and how it refers to the findings we just discussed. As modified by the text amendment, the special permit would allow this development to distribute floor area across zoning districts on the zoning lot and allow bulk waivers to the commercial development. So as a quick reminder of the current context, and should be familiar to the commissioners that attended the site tours, the existing condition is extremely challenging, with narrow or non-existent sidewalks, blank walls, and extensive infrastructure over streets that make the pedestrian experience uninviting, especially on a 95-degree day in July, as we saw on the site tours. The department worked closely with the Port Authority to develop urban design controls that are part of the special permit and will ensure that the new bus facility delivers an improved, high-quality public realm, one that facilitates the creation of a grand civic transit facility and reflects our ambitions as a city. The UD controls include site plans that codify the specific locations of certain elements, as well as detailed notes that explain how to achieve the design goals outlined. The urban design controls are focused on performance outcomes and not aesthetics, so there is flexibility for the applicant to be creative. We believe the controls ensure that the new bus facilities will incorporate design that will improve the relationship between the project and the surrounding neighborhood, with attention to pedestrian spaces, lighting, and active frontages. The urban design controls are organized by two themes: overstreet building elements and streetscape. So here we can see how the urban design controls translate to the site plan. You can see the anticipated ground floor with retail, lobby areas, and circulation space. The design controls were strategically located to focus on corridors that will help link points south and west to the main terminal and points east. Each frontage is labeled in the site plan as a different zone to allow for variation in the streetscape controls depending on the location. The bold lines with arrows represent these zones subject to streetscape controls, while the shaded boxes represent the overstreet elements or bridges that are subject to another group of urban design controls at 9th Avenue, 10th Avenue, and 40th Street. Let's focus on the urban design controls for streetscape. These controls will require design features that will ensure key frontages across the development site contribute to the public realm that prioritizes pedestrians, optimize place and movement, and improve the quality of life for neighboring communities. We have a list of specific controls on the right and include attention to entrances, transparency, and blank wall treatments. So for example, any section of the terminal that would be a blank wall, the controls request varied surface materials, visual artwork, or living plant materials. For signage, controls work to ensure that transit information is separate from accessory signage, ensuring clear wayfinding for users. We will now look at a few illustrative renderings of the new terminal to explore these controls. So here's a rendering of the proposed main terminal on 8th Avenue. The proposal improves and widens the sidewalk to accommodate the anticipated increase in bus terminal users and the general public. By demapping 41st Street, we can see the unification of the terminal. The proposed design controls define minimum dimensions and a minimum overhead clearance for the main terminal pedestrian space, require entrances to be located along the western edge, and establish design standards for lighting, facade transparency, and signage. At this key intersection, we believe these design measures will enhance the terminal's civic significance. In this rendering, we're looking east on 40th Street from 9th Avenue. The proposal includes wider sidewalks and circulation spaces, retail to activate the streets, as well as enhanced lighting and transparency. While the bus levels are set back from the lot line, the Port Authority plans to maintain the street wall of existing buildings at the corner, which will feature a retail location. There is an entrance to the main terminal along 9th Avenue. There will be a similar entrance along 40th Street, which roughly replaces a bus garage entrance. Since all bus operations are moved above, this vastly improves the experience of the street. The design controls aim to ensure that these entrances are both adequate for the facility and accommodate the pedestrians and users on this side of the terminal. Signage is expected to reflect the commercial character of 9th Avenue. This slide features a new rendering from the applicant, illustrating the possible street-level condition on 39th Street. On the right, we see the storage and staging building with a ramping structure visible in the background. The storage and staging building's chamfered design creates a wider sidewalk at this corner. Along West 39th Street, the proposed controls define a minimum area adjacent to the public sidewalk to be maintained as clear space for pedestrian traffic. Along the building frontage, the urban design controls establish requirements for street-facing activating uses and define allowances within the open space for associated fixtures and improvements, such as seating, plantings, and canopies. The urban design controls for overstreet building elements, again, include 9th Avenue, 10th Avenue, and 40th Street. These controls will require design features for the bridging elements that cross city streets to ensure that they positively contribute to the urban environment, with thoughtful consideration of lighting, noise attenuation, materials, and/or artwork that enhance the pedestrian sidewalk experience. We will now look at a few examples of these controls. So here we see the new proposed bridging over 9th Avenue. This image is taken from the draft environmental impact statement. The applicant has not provided updated renderings of this view, but we have a sense of scale of the proposal here. The new structure will contain bus operations, which is why it's significantly larger. The bridging will be located much higher above the street than the current structure, approximately 55 feet above 9th Avenue. Our design controls here push to achieve positive visual expression for pedestrians below. This could be transparency, artistic lighting, or visual artwork. For any mechanical equipment visible from street level, this should be incorporated into the building as much as possible or screened. On this slide, we have the view of the bridging element as it extends from 9th Avenue over 40th Street to the storage and staging facility. Similar to the previous slide, we don't have an updated image, only the massing. This bridge is also much higher than the current one that exists. The top of the current bridge is 49 feet, while the new bridge will have a lower level of 63 feet. That's what we can see here. To ensure the bridge makes a positive impact, the design controls ensure the proposal will incorporate visual design, lighting, and again, screening of mechanical equipment. All right, in this new illustrative rendering, we can see the bridges over 10th Avenue. As we discussed at certification, there are more bridges as they are necessary to access the upper levels of the terminal. The port has explored various options for these bridges, but working with the community board and the department has opted for a version that leaves the bridges unenclosed, which will allow for more light in the air on this avenue. Like the other bridges, the design controls will work to improve visual expression and address bulky mechanical equipment. For the retail improved sidewalks at the ground level to be successful, we believe that lighting underneath is key, and the port intends to provide lighting similar to the manner of the surrounding neighborhood. These bridges initially posed a challenge. However, infrastructure, if designed appropriately as the controls intend, can be an asset more than a barrier. As we discussed at certification, a mapping amendment was filed with the zoning application. These mapping amendments are needed for the proposed facility components that encroach over and into the right-of-way. The department, working with the port, has tried to minimize these encroachments where possible while supporting demappings that will enhance the new terminal. The proposal would complete the demapping of the eastern half of 41st Street that was partially done in the 1970s. This demapping will remove westbound through traffic on this section of 41st Street and was studied in the draft EIS. This would unify the main terminal ground floor and allow for the grand entrance at 8th Avenue. The other changes to the city map required can be grouped into three types: above grade demappings, or volumes in the air, seen in yellow; at grade, which are demappings occurring at the lot line or street level, seen here in green; and below grade demappings, which would be below the curb level, seen here in red. These demappings will provide the additional space required for the bus terminal to streamline operations and improve efficiency. The overbridging elements of the proposal will have an upper limiting plane of 50 feet. This will allow for flexibility for any mechanical equipment. So a quick review of the planned phasing to construct the new facility. Phase 1 will be building the Dyer Avenue deckovers. That will allow interim staging and construction equipment and buses. During Phase 1, they will also construct the ramp structure and the storage and staging facility. For Phase 2, operations of the terminal will move from the existing bus terminal to the storage and staging building. No longer needed for the bus gates, the main terminal will then be demolished and rebuilt. In Phase 3, bus operations will move to the main terminal and the entire facility will function as designed. At that point, the Port Authority will select a developer for building the overbuild towers. With all bus storage and staging within the new facility, the port will then be able to convert the Dyer Avenue deckovers to a 3.5-acre open space. So the Federal Transit Administration and the Port Authority are preparing a NEPA environmental impact statement to assess the potential benefits and effects of building the proposed project. Although this is a federal environmental review, the city has worked to ensure that the EIS will meet both SEQR as well as SEQRA standards. A draft EIS was published on February 2nd, 2024. Public hearings were held in late February and early May. The draft identified significant impacts with respect to historic and cultural resources, shadows, transportation, and construction. The materials are available on the Port's website. The department is continuing to work with the Port Authority as they prepare the final EIS, which is expected to be completed prior to CPC vote on the project. On May 28th, the CPC certified the project and it was referred out to public review on June 2nd. The Port had meetings with both Community Board 4 and Manhattan Borough President. On July 24th, Community Board 4 passed a resolution recommending this application be approved with conditions. The vote was 39 in favor, with 0 opposing or abstaining. The full resolution was included in the briefing package, but to summarize, the Community Board requested minor clarifications and modifications to the text in the special permit. The board requested that the geography of the special permit be more specifically tailored to the project site. The board has requested that the text further define bus station and related facilities so it's clear what is part of the bus terminal and what would be considered a separate use. The board also requested that the commercial uses allowed on the site be narrowed. The department has reviewed these requests and will discuss potential changes at the post-hearing. The board's conditions also relate to the draft EIS for the project, including mitigation measures identified therein. The board provided a detailed letter on March 18th, 2024 to the Federal Transit Administration that outlined their comments and questions related to the proposed mitigation measures. Although the list is long, a fair number of requests and clarifications are related to urban design elements, such as the heights of buildings and bridges, building materials, street-level activation, water sidewalks, and ensuring the terminal is designed to connect neighborhoods rather than divide them. Since the board voted prior to seeing updated renderings, we believe that these design comments underscore the need for the special permit's urban design controls. The board would also like that these requests be formalized in a points of agreement document. On August 18th, Manhattan Borough President Mark Levine also recommended the approval of this application with conditions. The Borough President echoed much of the requests of the Community Board, but highlighted a few specific items in the letter that I'll repeat here. So the Borough President requested the establishment of the Construction Task Force, that the request to modify the language of the special permit per CB4's requests are listened to, create a process for the future redevelopment of the deckovers to open space, which includes community engagement, to establish a timeline for communicating with local stakeholders on the future of Port Authority-owned sites in the neighborhood, and finally, to explore the permanent relocations of the Astros Dog Run. Like the Community Board, the Borough President also requested a signed points of agreement document. So to wrap up, the Port Authority is seeking the 3 zoning actions to facilitate a historic redevelopment of the Midtown Bus Terminal. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Great. Thank you very much. Obviously, we're going to pick this up at a public hearing on Wednesday. We'll see if there are questions here. I only had one, and I just wanted to clarify. I think in slide 22, you made a statement, and I just want to make sure that I heard it correctly. It was about the bottom and the top of the bridge over 39th Street. I think you said in your presentation that the top of the bridge was 63 feet, and I think what you meant was it is today, or to the extent that. So tell us what the proposal is and what the current dynamic is.
Yes, I apologize. I was supposed to change that in my script. The top of the existing bridge is 49 feet. The bottom of this new proposed bridge is 63 feet. So the point I want to emphasize is this is, a full story above the existing ramp over 40th Street.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you. Commissioner Mann.
Thanks for the detailed presentation. I just had a question about the overstreet building elements 2 and 1 as they relate to 3. I thought it sounded like there was some smart design development that was happening on overstreet building element 3. If we can just flip to that. And just curious, the thinking about applying the idea of creating more light and air for 1 and 2 and sort of discussions with the Port Authority to date there.
Thank you for the question, Commissioner. That's a really good one. It's difficult right now because we only have an idea of the Port's thinking on design for this particular section, 10th Avenue. This is a rendering they provided. But what's different about Section 2 and Section 1, so 9th Avenue and 40th Street, is that these aren't just bridges. This is actually a building. This will have operations in it, which is why they're bigger and bulkier. So there will be bus gates on this section here over 9th Avenue. And then this bridge here is facilitating all the buses on each level going from the main terminal to the storage and staging building. So we're hoping to see updated renderings of these to get a better sense of it. We understand they're different than the bridges on here on 10th Avenue, but we still think that lighting, screening of mechanical equipment, any improved visual expression will benefit the streets below.
Okay. And then just second question quickly, just on Dyer Avenue and those open spaces that could be created in the future. So what's the thinking around how that might be memorialized, if at all, as part of this application?
That's a really good question, Commissioner. It is separate of this action. That's Port Authority property, so they'll be building terra firma over that for staging and storage. It was identified that because of the increased size of the terminal and the increased size of the commercial towers, it does trigger an open space mitigation in the environmental impact statement. And so that was their thinking on, eventually providing that space. They are converting that space to open space. Since it won't be built for potentially a decade, they haven't opted for like a design process now. We are hoping, that we can work with the Port Authority that they will, commit to a process in the future that will include community engagement.
Got it. And then just last question on, I've got actually too many more questions. On FEIS and sort of mitigations, is there anything on the transportation piece in particular that you might provide additional context on for where the discussions stand on mitigation?
In related to which part of the project?
And the impacts that are disclosed in the DEIS.
Having gone through a lot of it, but not having it all in my head right now, the construction of this project obviously will have a lot of traffic impacts on the streets as they're building it, right? So they're going to have to shut down streets at various times. There's going to be queuing of cement trucks, a lot of different work. So from my memory, I know that is some of the additional mitigations that they'll have to look at and further explore as they get to that phase of development. But I'll also go back and dig a little deeper in that.
Maybe we can just let the applicant know. And then just finally on the overbuild tower as it relates to the bus terminal, this is probably a better question for the applicant, but I'm curious why not do the construction simultaneously or just determined infeasible, given that you have to come back and do all the construction staging again for an overbuild tower?
That's a very good question. The bus terminal will be built by the Port Authority. The office buildings are going to be developed by a private developer selected from an RFP. So they're not going to be building it. I don't know if they have more thinking on how they could make those timelines the same. Yeah. I think their concern is that they would want the main terminal constructed first and operational, and then work with the developer who would, do a good job of building the towers above it.
Thanks very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Benjamin?
Thank you very much for the presentation. And for the coming with us on the tour, which I thought was great. In terms of the my recollection from the tour is that the Port Authority spoke about the fact that they're building the infrastructure for the overbuilt buildings as part of the terminal itself. They are building the infrastructure and the subsurface. So at some point after they've finished that, I assume that the overbuildings can then proceed, but obviously they can't proceed until the Port Authority builds the substructures and the support structures.
Correct. Yeah, and this, quickly on this site plan, the blue are the tower lobbies. So they will be building the lobbies of the building, in the main terminal.
And second, there was some discussion of the relocation of the subway stairs. It appeared to suggest that it was temporary, that the subway stairs that are located west of 8th Avenue, at least two of which are inside the terminal currently, would be relocated to the east side of 8th Avenue, and an elevator where there is currently the Port Authority escalator would be replaced also on the east side. Is it the intention to move those back into the Port Authority building, or will they stay permanently on the east side of 8th Avenue?
That's a good question, Commissioner. So in my understanding of it, during construction, the current entrances west of 8th Avenue will not be accessible, and that will create a big issue for the remaining. And so there will be temporary access created for the subway terminal around the project site. I don't remember specifically where in my head.
They said on the east side of 8th Avenue, one, I think, at 40th Street, and one at 41st Street. I don't know exactly where the elevator will go, though.
Right. Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head right now. What we're looking at in this site plan, though, so in between the tower lobbies in blue are the new entrance, the rebuilt terminal with the expanded entrance, additional escalators, elevators down to the west side of 8th Avenue. And then currently on basically just left of what we are looking at is where the current 40th Street and 8th Avenue, there's a subway stair there, typical.
Right, they're going to expand
MTA.
that.
Right. That will be moved so that we'll have additional pedestrian space here. And if I go back, it's kind of covered by the pink lines in Zone B, but it'll be moved and reopened just south of the office tower lobby on the south. So they're moving that one entrance.
If you could ask them for a more detailed description of both the interim state of how one would access the 42nd Street subway and the permanent plan for how one would access that. I'd love to see a graphic of where they're going to be and how it's going to accommodate the public.
Yep. Thank you for the question. I will pass that along.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Osorio.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks so much for the presentation, and I agree. Thank you so much for the tour. That was really useful. I have a couple questions, and I have some questions I'll leave for tomorrow, but for Wednesday. But I wanted to ask you specifically a couple things. One was, do you know what's been the extent of the conversations with what they're referring as an environmental justice advisory group? In other words, have you received a little bit more information that you can share in terms of what the scope of those meetings, the agendas, and specifically what is that composed of?
Yeah, what was provided in the briefing package is the same that I saw, but I think that's a good question to ask the applicant.
Okay, great, thank you. I'm just very interested in that. And then bridging that with the second question, and this is something that, I think we discussed a couple of times and with them at the tour. I'm wondering if you've already perhaps created a really good opportunity with the points of agreement document and the way in which you're thinking about it to at least provide some guidelines, design guidelines for the open spaces. one thing is the actual open spaces themselves, which we understand are separate and so forth. We were just discussing how, to immortalize that commitment. But another thing is also pedestrian mobility and urban design in and around them. And I feel that both the conversation on environmental justice impacts, or that the conversation on environmental justice impacts may, may be what you need to actually, really create a couple very basic, opportunities to guide, what that should look like now, because it's I think it would be important at least to just clarify what are we committing for or to. For example, fencing. For example, the width of the sidewalk. Things like that are related with the design of the open space, but more broadly are really sort of like about the public spaces in and around, which I, by the way, think that the way in which you broke down or prioritized the findings is actually very useful. My second suggestion or, question, but also more suggestion for you to think about is, this in my mind sounds like a really good opportunity for the department to use the principles of urban design. Maybe this could be kind of like a little bit of a pilot project for you to show, how to use them. And maybe that's kind of like a way to, as you said, focus on performance of these spaces, not preclude exactly, site design, but at the same time, let the public know on specifically these areas that are not going to be designed yet, where is the bottom line, basically?
Yep. Thank you for that, Commissioner. I would say, for the site plan itself of the project, the urban design controls are specific to how we are thinking about, how the port designs these zones that you can see, like along the site plan. So north of the open space, we are working to make sure that the south side of the storage and staging facility and it's the street level is designed in a manner that understands there will be an open space across from it and that folks will be moving north to it. We don't have, we don't have the urban design controls on the open space themselves because it's separate from the application. But I think you bring up a really good point about what we're thinking on how, we can get commitments for that space in the future.
Thank you. You also hint to something that I think could be yet another level, which is that, yes, we don't know exactly how they're going to be designed, but they're part of an open space system, an open space network that at least requires some level of understanding of how this is going to connect to them.
And these are all really good questions, and I think it'll be good to hear from the applicant.
Sounds good, reasonable. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, sure.
Hi, Commissioner. Just to provide one clarification, you referenced the points of agreement and that perhaps we should incorporate some of these things into the POA. But just to be clear, when Ben referenced the POA, that was a request that the community board made to execute a points of agreement to memorialize some of the mitigation measures and other commitments. It's not a POA between the department and the port. So we just wanted to provide that clarification.
Thank you. I understand. But what I'm saying is that maybe that's an opportunity for you to facilitate a conversation and suggest, that as another important component for that conversation. Thank you. But I appreciate that. One last thing, but this is maybe for more if you have a chance to share with them. I know that there were some questions, or at least I asked some questions at the tour about energy storage and energy efficiency, and if you can remind them about that, hopefully, so we can see some of that tomorrow on Wednesday. Thank you.
Great. Yep.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. Okay, so we'll pick this up on Wednesday unless there are other questions here. Okay, great. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for everything. I'm going to bring up Stephen Leonard for a moment, just to, this is back on item number 3, the 12203 14th Avenue rezoning. Just wanted to clarify one point that was made earlier. So, Stephen Leonard, back to you. This is a reminder of the item that was in College Point, Queens, the facilitation of a new 6-story building, mixed-use building with 103 units. So, go ahead, Stephen.
Thank you, Commissioner. My name is Stephen Leonard. I'm the Director of Technical Review at the Department of City Planning. So that proposal, 12203 14th Avenue, was to rezone an R4 to an R6A with MIH. And Commissioner Benjamin, I believe, asked what effect the CHO text amendment would have on that proposal. Our board planner, Joy Chen, said that the max height without CHO would be 65 feet and that it would increase to 95 feet with CHO. But actually, the current max height in an R6A district with MIH is 85 feet, and that would increase to 95 feet. That's just wanted to correct that for the record and for your information.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Benjamin, do you have a question on that?
I just want to make sure that also the 3.6 FAR would in fact increase to 3.9?
That's my understanding.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you, Stephen. Okay, great. Back to our usually scheduled programming. Sarah, what's next?
Future votes for consideration on Wednesday, September 11th. Staff have prepared a report for 215 Lexington Avenue DOHMH office space. Allie is here to present a slide.
All right, hi, Allie.
Hello. All right. Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is a notice of intent to acquire office space by the Department of Administrative Services, or DCAS, and the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, or DOHMH, pursuant to Section 195 of the New York City Charter, to make use of office space located at 215 Lexington Avenue in the Kips Bay neighborhood of Manhattan Community District 6. It was presented to the City Planning Commission at the August 21st public hearing and is scheduled for a vote on September 11th, 2024. The Department of City Planning supports the requested action, which would facilitate the relocation of DOHMH's Poison Control Center from its current office at 455 First Avenue, which is planned to be demolished. The proposed office space meets the spatial and programmatic needs of the Poison Control Center. It's located in Kips Bay, which has a concentration of institutional uses, including many healthcare uses, making it well-suited to house the Poison Control Center. Its proximity to Bellevue Hospital is also important, as required by the siting criteria of the citywide Statement of Needs. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Allie. Excellent. Thank you.
Staff have also prepared reports on 1680 Southern Boulevard, Casa Boricua, 60 East 93rd Street, South Jamaica Gateway rezoning, and 2390 McDonald Avenue rezoning. Just note on the last item, there was also a memo from the applicants in your weekend materials. Okay. Post-hearing follow-ups. For post-hearing follow-ups on the items which had a public hearing at the August 21st public meeting, we have 10 Rockefeller Center Hotel Special Permit. Matthew is here to present.
All right. Welcome, Matthew.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. So I'll wait for the slide to appear. Great. So as a reminder, the applicant is Little Nell Big Apple LLC, and the development site is located at 10 Rockefeller Plaza within Manhattan Community District 5. The applicant has requested a special permit pursuant to ZR Section 74-152 to facilitate an office-to-hotel conversion. The Department of City Planning recommends the approval of the request action, and September 25th is the scheduled vote date. That's all I have for you today.
Okay, thank you very much. Great, thank you.
Okay, next we have Brooklyn Yards. Josh is here to present.
Hi, Josh.
Good afternoon, Chair, Commission. All right, so this is a private application from Brooklyn Yards Development LLC for zoning map amendment from M11 and R5 to C45, R6, and R6C24, zoning text amendment to Appendix F for MIH and Appendix I for a transit zone expansion, multiple special permits, including a large-scale general development, and zoning authorizations to facilitate a 335,000 square foot development, including 270 units, commercial, office, and retail space. The application was certified on June 10th, and the public hearing was held on the 21st. First, I want to note that in response to questions from the Commission, public hearing regarding the applicant's coordination with DOT, we shared a letter from the applicant in your Friday briefing package. I also want to confirm that the workforce option has since been withdrawn from the MIH text amendment in the application. The department supports this application that would transform a portion of an underutilized railroad right-of-way for residential and commercial uses that would enhance and enliven the area. The proposed actions would facilitate transit-oriented development and enable the construction of housing units in this growing community where housing is in great demand. Of the 270 dwelling units that would be created, 81 would be permanently income restricted. Retail and office space would also be included, given the location is rich with transit access. Due to the unique site constraints, the special permit's bulk modifications within the proposed large-scale general development, along with parking waivers, would facilitate residential uses on a permanent platform above the right-of-way, while allowing for existing and future railroad operations. Lastly, the proposed development would create public open space in a neighborhood that has limited access to these resources. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Okay, Sarah, what's next?
Next, for 962, 972 Franklin Avenue rezoning, which had a hearing at the August 7th public meeting. Josh is also here to present this one.
Great. Hello again.
Thank you. So I'm here to follow up on the recent public hearing on this application and continued discussion for the 962 Franklin rezoning application. First, to summarize public testimony, now that it is concluded, there were 514 statements in opposition, almost entirely in response to shadows created on the proposed development, and 17 in support. Here's an update on mitigations at the Jackie Robinson Playground. The applicant has committed to mitigations in coordination with the Community Board, and Parks Department has recommended the following mitigations: reconstructing the handball courts, new lighting for the 2 basketball courts, sidewalk improvements, and new benches and bike racks. We're working with the applicant team to include these commitments in the restrictive declaration. As a reminder, on July 12th, the applicant submitted an A application proposing a text amendment to limit development below an inclined plane. The plane would start at a height of 85 feet, we can see here in red, and rise at an angle of 26.83 degrees. Under this text amendment, the full floor area and units of the original proposed R8A development would fit in the envelope and would reduce but not mitigate shadow impacts on both Brooklyn Botanic Gardens and Jackie Robinson Playground. The department is currently reviewing alternatives for potential modifications. These modifications would be both to the proposed zoning district and to the angle of the A-text plane. I'll note that these modifications were suggested by both the borough president and BPG. First, we're looking at R8X, so reducing R8A to an R8X district, R7X, sorry, thank you, and with a reduced angle from 26.83 down to 17 degrees, and this would permit a FAR of 6. Second is R7D at a reduced angle of 15 degrees, and this would allow the 5.6 FAR in R7D district. And lastly, at R7A at an angle of 10 degrees, this would include this would permit the housing opportunity FAR bump of 5 FAR. And for a timeline for the remainder of the CPC ULURP clock, following today's post-hearing, the FEIS and notice of completion needs to be issued on this Thursday, the 12th, in advance of the CPC vote, which will be on September 23rd. We hope to return this Wednesday to share more information on these modifications.
Carla or Bruce Floyd.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Let me go to Commissioner Dweck for a question, but before I do, so right now there's a few different possibilities that are being studied. Is that correct, at the various angles that you described?
Thank you for the question, Chair. Yes, that's correct. The three that I outlined, the department's currently looking into. We have updated secret materials from the applicant team we received this morning, which is why we can't speak to units or shadows right now, and hope to return with more information on that so we can propose a modification.
Okay, so we'll look forward to seeing the department's analysis of those various options. But the key date for Thursday on the environmental documents is to include the range of possibilities. Is that correct?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So that is correct. The FEIS that needs to be issued on Thursday needs to include in its alternative section, alternative chapter, these modifications, which were not currently analyzed.
Right. So it needs to include the alternatives, and that is the range of possible outcomes at the end of the day. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. So we'll revisit as we can on Wednesday, and we'll see if that allows us to make any conclusive determinations here.
That's okay. We hope to report
Okay.
back.
Let me go to Commissioner Dweck. Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. Vice Chair Knuckles.
Yeah, are the applicants abreast of our deliberations in this regard?
Yes, we've been coordinating with the applicant team and their environmental consultant, and they've, as I said this morning, shared materials on these three alternatives so we can study the accuracy of it, share with Parks Department and the Botanic Garden so they can weigh in.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Back to Commissioner Dweck.
Yeah, just currently it's an R6A,
Currently R6A.
which is a 3.6.
That would be with MIH. There's no MIH
So
there,
3
so
FAR.
3 FAR currently.
So, but the applicant has the potential or the ability to pull the application before we vote on it.
The applicant could always withdraw.
Thank you.
Commissioner Mann.
Yeah, just a quick question. Has the Parks Department had a chance to review, or is anybody else reviewing beyond the Brooklyn Botanic Gardens, the light and air impact question to the Brooklyn Botanic Gardens?
Yes, so all the shadows chapters are reviewed by Parks Department. Their lead on that, and they coordinate with BBG given the sensitivity of the resources.
Got it. So that coordination's happening for these three options here?
Yes, as we speak.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks very much. We will pick this up. Hold on.
We do have a question from Commissioner Gold on.
Sorry, Commissioner Gold, you're up.
Thank you. Just to follow up on the point on Parks Department. You know, at the time when we did the hearing, there was some view in there, at least from the applicant, that either Parks or that the neighborhood didn't exactly want from their interest the handball courts updated. That basically some of the items that were being put forward were not in response to community need. Do we have any update on that? I mean, I know we see an update on what they're going to do in the park, but anything there to say that you know that now that is something that they want? As I say, at that point there was a strong view that it wasn't what the community wanted.
Yes, thank you for the question, Commissioner. I can clarify. So I think what you're referring to is originally they were going to replace the handball courts, and the community board shared concerns about that. The handball courts are a beloved resource there. They didn't want to see them gone, so instead the handball courts are going to be updated, but not removed.
Got it. Okay, so there's been some resolution with them all working together then. It's not a unilateral sort of put forward.
Yes, the community's been involved in the mitigation discussions.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Benjamin?
You said the community's been involved. Has the garden reviewed any of these proposals and offered any comments?
Thank you for the question. So I was referring to Jackie Robinson Playground mitigations. The garden is with Parks Department is reviewing the alternatives for a potential modification.
And the community is reviewing that side of things on the Washington Avenue side also?
I'm not sure of any community board review at this point. They're aware of it, but in terms of the modifications for the garden, I can't speak to if the community's been involved in that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay. we will pick this one back up as soon as we can, perhaps as soon as Wednesday. Thank you, by the way, to you, Josh, and to the Brooklyn office and the environmental review team and everybody who is really working quite hard to sort out a very complicated issue, and we really appreciate everything that you're doing for that. I just want to make sure I see it very closely. I just want to make sure the commission and anybody who can hear this sees how much work you all are doing to try to bring this to a reasonable outcome. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. We appreciate that.
Okay, let's go on to the next item.
Okay. Our last item for today is the City of Yes for Housing Opportunity, which had a public hearing at the July 10th public meeting. There was a memo in your weekend materials as well as comments and testimonies. John is here to present.
Hello, John.
Hello. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Here we go. Okay. The agenda for today is the department will introduce two proposed modifications to the zoning text that was referred out and that you heard back in July. First, we would propose a modification to our proposal that would enable height-limited contextual development on a broader range of sites than is possible today. And second, we would propose a modification to allow projects underway on the date of enactment of housing opportunity zoning changes to vest against that zoning change. That is, to proceed under the prior zoning rather than having to take two steps backward or redo various things in ways that could add time and expense. Let's go into a little more detail here. So you'll remember from the last post-hearing follow-up on August 19th, we did a deep dive on our set of proposals to enable contextual infill on those last few sites where zoning today forces developers to do the 1961 tall, skinny, non-contextual development that neighborhood residents tend not to like, that developers themselves tend not to like, inefficient building form, lower FAR. And so the proposed modification is to that set of proposals. There were two different sites that we looked at encompassed by this proposal. First are the irregular sites, a very deep site or an oddly shaped site or an obstructed site, say you have elevated infrastructure or something like that next to it. Those sites lack a workable envelope and other contextual regs that could work, and so they kind of default to this older 1961 non-contextual development and force anybody who wants to build something there to double down on that 1961 zoning. The other set of sites, which have been subject to a greater amount of conversation, are zoning lots with existing buildings. And those can be, relatively modest mid-block sites with vacant land next door, all the way up to, the biggest tower in a park campuses that you're familiar with in the city. The proposed modification that we're going to discuss today pertains to that second category, zoning lots with existing buildings. So, as I said last follow-up session, if and when development happens on these sites, often referred to as infill development, the department wants to ensure that that can be modern, height-limited, contextual infill development, as opposed to the tall, skinny, height factor buildings that we've seen in years past. And so to further that intent and to be responsive to comments that we've heard during public review, the department would propose the following modifications. This slide is from last follow-up, but you see I've highlighted one of the bullets there. Part of this proposal was to align distance between buildings regulations with state multiple dwelling law standards. So say require 40 feet of distance between buildings, below 125 feet of height, 80 feet between buildings above, and we proposed to make that change for any type of development that happens on a zoning lot with an existing building, height factor campus, that sort of thing. in order to, underscore what we desire to do here, which is to incentivize the modern height-limited infill as opposed to the tall, skinny stuff, we propose to make that change only for new contextual development. That is the height-limited development. We heard comments from people who said, why would you make that change for height factor development if you're trying to discourage that relative to modern contextual infill? And we thought that was a good comment, and so we proposed to make that change. That underscores, our longstanding commitment to contextual development that stretches back to the 70s. And we consider this proposal writ large to be a culmination of sorts of, a 50-year work program we've had moving away from non-contextual zoning that clashes with existing built fabric to, what we know and love as contextual zoning with height limits baked in. So you can see some of the examples of the height factor buildings that have caused, these are just the ones that have caused controversies recently, but they've been, bedeviling us for many decades. Here's what we're trying to enable, whether you're a church site with a building that can't comply with the contextual regs, and so zoning would force you to do non-contextual, whether you're a, height factor campus. Here's the other example of, on the left, is what we would force this campus to do today under the zoning. On the right is what we're trying to enable. And again, that modification is for the distance between buildings changes to do that only for the types of buildings you see on the right and not do them for the types of buildings that you see on the left. You can hold questions until the end. Okay. Modification number 1. That's it for the slides, but I can describe the next one, which will be familiar to all of you from previous applications, which is the vesting issue. For larger zoning actions, the Commission often addresses the issue of vesting with the help from feedback heard during public review. And the department has heard from various entities, parties who have developments in process that would be affected in one way or another by the Housing Opportunity Text Amendment. And so we are proposing language, a modification to address that in the CHO zoning text. While the fine details are still being worked out, the department does want to reiterate our commitment to hold harmless projects underway in reliance on current zoning regulations. Since housing opportunity is in general less restrictive than the current zoning, this isn't an issue for, a wide swath of development. But we should address any in-process affordable housing or mixed income projects that were financed under the assumption of certain bonus ratios in the existing inclusionary housing, whether R10 or IHDA. We should take care of large scales and other phased developments that are already underway and that have been approved and financed, with the idea that they're going to accomplish a site plan that maybe came through the commission or came through HPD. Or, even applications for site-specific approvals that are before you right now, where they had to submit very specific drawings based on the existing zoning to the technical review division, wouldn't change the outcome of the overall project. We don't want to force people to, pay their consultants however much it would take to just redo the application if it's the same end result. So those types of projects. The department is working on, the exact, precise, most appropriate milestones to make sure that we're capturing the full range of projects to allow them to vest, and we'll provide specifically proposed text with you to you most likely in a Friday memo in the coming week or two. That doesn't encompass the full range of modifications that we'll present to you. The other ones are in the nature of corrections, technical fixes, primarily non-substantive changes to ensure that the text is clear and enacts the intent of the text that was referred out. And we will be providing more detail on that in the coming weeks as well. If there are any questions, happy to answer them.
Great. Thank you very much, John. All right, let me see if there are questions for you. Commissioner Mann.
Hey, John. Just a quick question on the vesting. So does the vesting work both ways, meaning that projects are going through the public review process can't take the benefit of the CHO? Is that the idea as well?
Right. I mean, for the most part, the language will say may as opposed to shall. If projects, if a large scale that was proceeding pursuant to the old IH regs would rather take advantage of UAP, for instance, with the lower AMIs and the income averaging, we wouldn't say no to that. But we don't want to force them to do that if it would blow up, a phased development plan that's already been approved and financed. Got it.
Commissioner Benjamin?
Just one quick question. The enactment date, is that the date that it's approved by the city council or the date that it's approved by us?
Typically, the city council approval, the day that it becomes, the law of the land.
And does that include, never mind.
And it's 5 days after the date of, no, it's right on the day of the city council vote.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think, unless the mayor involves himself,
It's right on the date of the vote. Okay, great. Other questions? Okay, great. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
All right. Sarah? Let's talk about what else we have on the agenda today, if anything.
That was our last item for the day, Chair.
I had a feeling that's what you were going to say. Do you have any other announcements or business before we close?
Not at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Everybody, we'll see you Wednesday morning for our public hearing, and thanks everybody for your time and attention. We're adjourned.
The time is 3:38 p.m.